Hey guys, what's up? It's Greg Strzavosty with Cinematics. I'm on my DJ Pocket Osmo 3. If you've listened to past episodes, you've noticed how much I really do not like this machine. It's been crapping out on me, family show, quite a bit. But right now, I'm trying my best to make it work because I'm doing a little bit of a very quick intro regarding Eric Holmes' 2 interviews for this installment of the Cinematics Hodgepod. First up is filmmaker Jeremiah Kipp. He has a new movie called The Mortuary Assistant out right now. I'm not looking at my MacBook right now and to read the plot summary. I'm going to put all of that stuff on our show notes, but just know this about Mr. Kipp. He directed a movie several years ago called Slapface, a movie that I would love to rewatch. It's such a really interesting coming-of-age, haunting story, blend of a genre, and the end of the movie of Slapface still is just, to me, just very unforgettable, and really love him as a person as well. Me and Eric interviewed Kipp a couple of years back in promotion of Slapface, and I just automatically knew he's a huge cinephile. If I recall from that interview, we talked a lot about Samuel Fuller. In this installment with his interview with Eric Holmes, they talk about, of course, The Mortuary Assistant, which hits theaters, I believe, on Friday, February 13th. And also, in the interview, he talks about Phantasm and a couple of other film references. I'm trying to remember what he talks about. Phantasm from Don Coscarelli, that's director Don Coscarelli, and he references other movies as well. The Silent Hill franchise, what worked or what didn't work about that franchise. The reason why Silent Hill is mentioned is because The Mortuary Assistant, the movie is based as an adaptation of the acclaimed and popular video game of the same name. I have not played the video game or seen Kipp's latest film. Really excited to, and just everything aside, he is a huge cinephile, and he's one of those directors I actually personally, because I consider him a colleague, and if he was probably in town, probably would be a friend of mine as well. I consider him a friend, but he's so busy. We've never hung out in person, but I consider a lot of cinephiles in cinematics our brethren, and he is in many ways one of us. I'm really hoping that I enjoy the Mortuary Assistant as much as Slapface. I know Eric Holmes, he's going to review it this week on Cinematics. He's going to give it a really good review. You can tell from the interview he was really excited to talk to Jeremiah, not because he's a colleague and a friend, but because he really enjoyed the movie as well. I hope I hold the same reaction for The Mortuary Assistant. We'd love to hear what you guys think of the movie. Leave it in the comments. Hit me, Eric, or Bruce up on Cinematics. Here over at Cinematics, we really love to spotlight independent film, under the radar movies, and even though it is based on a video game, The Mortuary Assistant is not a huge high-profile film that's going to be playing at your local IMAX theater. Hopefully this movie, the lead is Willa Holland, who I believe is very underrated actress, very powerful lead. Really interesting to see how she does in this movie as well. So check out The Mortuary Assistant, check out this interview with Eric Holmes for the first segment. The second segment is an interview with, I should have brought the notes, but I'm trying to think, it's Stacey Tenenbaum. Stacey Tenenbaum is the filmmaker behind this documentary called Tough Old Broads. She did a documentary on 3, quote, tough old broads. And the requirement was she wanted to have an interview and spotlight 3 women at least over 70 who have made an impact in their respective professions or in their lives and are still being very productive as tough old broads. Eric Holmes, in his interview with Stacey Tenenbaum, said the movie was very inspiring to him, and I really want to check that movie out as well. Bad news is I'm recording this on Wednesday, February 11th. I think there was a screening tonight. It's screening at the Santa Barbara International Film Festival. I think it's called SBIFF, and the last screening is in the morning. And it was funny because Stacey said it's a morning screening for seniors. I'm 54. I consider myself a senior. That out of all the screenings that Tough Old Broads was available, I think it was 3 screenings. Probably the first 2, if I was in Santa Barbara and I was a critic or a cinephile, more importantly, I would probably not have seen the first 2 screenings. Well, maybe the first screening if it was a Q&A. I know I think all of the Tough Old Broads showed up to different screenings, the first 2 screenings. The last screening, she said, is for seniors because it's going to be on, I believe, Friday, February 13th at the Santa Barbara International Film Festival in the morning. I will leave a link where you guys can actually check it out and regarding the film festival. And then finally for Jeremiah Kipp, I will also leave links to both these filmmakers and how you can find their work, their IG profiles, their movie profiles, etc., etc. All that information you can get from The Mortuary Assistant and also for Tough Old Broads in our show notes for Cinematics. One last thing, this is a little bit roughshod, but I'm putting the videos together. I'm not this great video editor. I'm just slapping these three segments, the intro segment, which is this segment, Jeremiah's segment, which is the first, and then we have Stacey's segment, which closes out the Cinematics podcast episode, Hodgepod episode. I've never done a video, quote unquote, video podcast and released it to Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We've always done it. I've always taken the video, stripped it, turned them into audio, and just released it as an audio podcast. But lo and behold, little old me didn't realize that for several years you were able to upload video podcasts on your respective platforms. I believe Spotify and Apple Podcasts do it, and maybe when YouTube started getting really heavy in the podcast game, video podcast became the thing over audio. So I'm sure other platforms just use audio, and I'm going to figure that out. That said, I apologize for this rambling intro. I'm not going to edit it. I did edit the Kipp segment and the Tenenbaum segment, so it's a little bit more edited than my murmurings right now. So I apologize for my long intro. Thank you for supporting me, Eric, and Bruce here over at Cinematics. Most importantly, we would love, instead of supporting us, and you can do all that stuff, like our podcast or subscribe or however you do it, as long as you're listening, and hopefully we're giving you guys a little bit more insights on the movies that are coming out on a given week. And Eric, with all his hard work, is also spotlighting and interview a lot of filmmakers and actors who are promoting their respective projects. So thank you so much for supporting us three here on Cinematics. Again, most importantly, search out these wonderful movies. Let us know what you think. The Mortuary Assistant, Tough Old Broads. First up is Jeremiah Kipp. I'm not going to do a transition double intro, so you're not going to have to see my stupid face and my rubblings in the transition. So thanks again for your support. And then again, after Jeremiah, we have Stacey Tenenbaum for Tough Old Broads. If you're around Santa Barbara International Film Festival for Friday, February 13th, check that one out as well. Take care, guys. And I will be back in a couple of days as Eric and I review the movies this week. Like I said, I haven't seen The Mortuary Assistant. We're recording it the episode in less than 24 hours. I will see the movie by then, and maybe me and Eric will do a spoilerific review of The Mortuary Assistant. Okay? Take care, guys, and we'd love to hear what movies you're watching as well. Bye.
I'm here with Jeremiah Kipp, director of The Mortuary Assistant. I guess, I've seen this, I've seen Slapface, and we've had a couple of movies come in since then that I miss, unfortunately, but you're pretty good at this filmmaking thing, so glad to have you here.
Likewise, it's always really good talking to you, Eric.
Yeah, I guess I'll start with, so this is based off of a video game adaptation, and I'm not familiar with the video game, but I was wondering, because there's certain elements in horror that you can get away with in horror that you can't get away with in other movies. For example, dark lit, dirty hospital room works great in a horror movie. If you try that in ER or Scrubs, people will be like, no, that's we're not buying that. Is there anything when doing a video game adaptation, certain things you can get away with in a video game adaptation that might not work in any other movie?
Yeah, and when I thought about adapting a video game, I weirdly thought of a movie that was not a video game, but had some of the same techniques as video game. So I really love Jonathan Demme, and I love Silence of the Lambs in particular. And if you remember the final act of that movie, you've got scenes where Jodie Foster is walking around in this dark basement, and it'll have a shot of Jodie Foster, and then it will cut to her POV, her perspective, if she's like walking down a hallway and about to turn a corner. And I thought about that a lot when I was playing the Mortuary Assistant, where I was like, oh, is this not just creating empathy for our central character, like putting the viewer inside the shoes of our protagonist? And that's something that video games do very well. And movies, I think it's a little bit of a translation where you take that video game technique of you're scared because it's you doing it. And in movies, you have to shift that over to you completely identify with the main character as they're going along on their journey. So John Carpenter's Halloween would make a pretty great video game, but it also is like a pretty great movie because you pin yourself on these three young women who are being stalked by Michael Myers. I think that's the thing with indie horror games and indie horror movies, is like pinning identification on a central character. So when I played the game, that was like the translation for me. I thought that was really cool and really interesting. I love how like Markiplier, who just directed Iron Lung, has made an entire living and 38 million fans out of people watching him play a game. And when he's playing a game, you just see him getting so emotionally involved in the content of the game. And for me, it wasn't that big a stretch because when I watch a horror film, I get completely emotionally involved if it's a good movie. And I think that Brian Clark, who developed the game, and I both had that shared agreement that we wanted the viewer or the audience member to be pulled along on the journey.
What got you involved in this movie?
Slapface did. I
Makes
made
sense.
Slapface, which you saw, and the sales agent for that movie was Epic Pictures Group, and they sold it to Shudder. So Epic and Shudder both loved the video game, which was a viral hit, and they were considering directors for it. So they approached me and they said, Jeremiah, would you like to adapt a video game? And when they said that, I wasn't initially intrigued. I don't want to adapt anything. But then when they sent me the game and I played it, I was like, oh, I don't want to adapt a video game. I want to adapt this video game because I felt so pulled in by the characters and the story and the content. And it's funny, I just rewatched the movie Phantasm by Don Coscarelli. And I think that Phantasm is like Slapface and the Mortuary Assistant. It's about a little boy and his older brother confronting a monster, and it takes place in a mortuary. I remember after I'd filmed Mortuary Assistant, I was hanging out with a filmmaker friend who said, you finally got to make your version of Phantasm. And I thought to myself, wow, maybe I've been doing that all along. I think that we are always like it feels like we're walking in the sand towards a great city, following in the footsteps of great people who preceded us. And it's funny to think about movies like Phantasm and Silence of the Lambs in the context of Mortuary Assistant, saying, oh, these were the movies that made you. So therefore, these are the movies that you want to lovingly bring into your stories.
Yeah. And then Brian Clark, the creator of the video game, was co-writer on this and producer. Well, I guess I don't know what his background in screenwriting is, but did he have any hurdles to jump with that? Or like, what was that? Because he's steeped in video games, you're steeped in film. What was some stuff that you two got to bounce off each other and learn from each other?
Well, he's a huge cinephile. Like he loves movies. And like when he was creating Mortuary Assistant, he was thinking more about like great horror movies that he's seen and incorporating them into his gameplay, which made him a really good companion for me because I also love horror movies and we could bond on that together and talk about a common language of horror filmmaking. Now, when the script was being developed, we brought on Tracy Beebe, who's an Austin, Texas-based screenwriter, and she pinned the whole movie on Rebecca Owens and gave her like a really strong character arc that we followed religiously. But then Brian, we wanted to make sure that we retained the flavor and the sensibility and the mood and the atmosphere of his game, which is very specific and unique. So Brian came in like the cavalry, and like within the structure that Tracy had provided so brilliantly, he worked within it to give the characters the voice of his game and even structured certain scenes to pay homage to elements from his game. And it wound up being a really fruitful collaboration. He was on set with us every day, almost every day. He missed only a couple. And I really cared about having him hardwired into the storytelling. And he was absorbing it like a sponge. He loved being on set and he had a lot of really great insights because I looked at him the way that when I've directed police procedurals and you have like a homicide detective on set who can be your expert, your resident expert. I looked at Brian Clark as that, only a demonologist. Like he really understood the game and the lore and the characters better than anyone. So I could always go to the well and draw water from Brian Clark's brilliant mind and then apply that to cinematic technique. And that made us very good dance partners throughout. We became very good friends, and I would love to collaborate with him again on if we should be so lucky to work on another Mortuary Assistant movie or something else. I would absolutely jump at the occasion.
And Willa Holland, who played
Yeah.
Rebecca Owen, looked her up, and she's no stranger to video games herself. She's done some voice acting. Was that part of the decision in casting her, or was that just a happy accident?
It was a happy accident, but it did come in handy when we were doing ADR, which is additional dialogue recording. So her anime and her game experience came in very handy when recording some additional dialogue, but also we had to do there's a bit where like her character gets knocked across the room and we had to have a scream. And we were like, all right, well, we'll save the scream for last because we don't want you to blow out your pipes. And she's like, guys, I really know how to do this. I know exactly what this requires. Like I've done Japanese anime and I've done games where you have to modulate your voice. And we're like, yeah, well, let's do it at the end. And then she did it at the end and she could do it over and over again. She's like, see, I told you. It was like when you watch Akira and you hear the voices that go, oh yeah, whatever. And she could do it over and over again because she had total control over her ability to make sounds. And that came from her background in working on animation, working on anime, and working on video games. So it was one of those things where it's not the reason we cast her, but it was one of those things where she was able to reveal it as almost like a Jedi mind trick or something like that. She was so skilled at it. But no, the casting director, Alison Estrin, recommended her. And another Slapface connection was our producer, Mike Manning, had produced a film that she acted in. And when I saw her name on the list, I called up Mike and said, "Hey, what's Willa Holland?" And he said, "Oh, you guys will love each other. She's great. She's very professional. And I think that you'll understand her. She has a very specific way of working, but I think she'll be good for you and you will be good for her." So we talked to Willa. We did 3 or 4 Zooms while she was considering the role. And together we built a trust system with each other. I really loved her work I mean, a lot of fans of genre work and TV series know her from the OC and from Arrow, which is a DC Comics Green Arrow series. But I knew her more from a Beverly Cleary adaptation called Tiger Eyes and The Dirty South, which she'd done with my friend Mike. And there was something about Willa's ability to present a character who was not really waiting to greet you and hug you, meaning like there was a distance between her and kind of emotional availability. And in a way that I responded to and liked, I was like, well, Rebecca Owens is very shy and is very nervous around other people, but she's very comfortable around the dead. And the more I talked to Willa, the more I saw how much she identified with Rebecca, because Rebecca Owens was denied her childhood. Like she had a very terrible things happen to her when she was a kid, and she suffers from drug addiction. And Willa was like, yeah, my entire childhood was not there because when she was 6 years old, she was on movie sets surrounded by 300 dudes in baseball caps with lenses pointed at her. So she was on set and playing in a sandbox in an imaginary dream world more than she was in school. And in that sense, she feels like she was denied a little bit of reality. And she was like, I think that's where Rebecca Owens walks. And I think that's something I'd like to bring into the character. And I found that it made Rebecca very sympathetic to me. It's like anything where someone's allowed to be vulnerable and at the same time be forced to be brave because of extenuating circumstances. That's the kind of protagonist for me. And I thought Willa was absolutely great.
Yeah, also with that character, like given the whole sort of idea of this, like there's, I guess, unreliable narrators, a good way to put it. Like
She is shaky.
she's not just playing the character, she's like playing different levels of her character through different. We'll just leave it there, but you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's to do with some of the themes of addiction and depression. I mean, so Rebecca Owens has a lot of problems in her life, and that's why the demons attach themselves to her because she is shaky. And in that shakiness, like time slips and reality slips, and she starts like becoming possessed and acting truly bizarre. And I think that Willa looked at those scenes where she's not just playing Rebecca Owens, she's playing an entity inhabiting her. She was interested in those elements as, well, what if the intrusive voices in your head when you're depressed are the ones that are speaking out loud? And I think she grounded her character in that kind of intent when she was playing the demonic version of Rebecca.
That was all that kind of stuff. Was that in the video game that got transferred to here, or was that stuff that you added to the story of the movie itself?
In the game, Rebecca is constantly being assaulted by these spirits, and they're constantly trying to attack her in her mind and in her heart. And sometimes they do take her over. There are scenes in the game where Rebecca is completely overtaken by these entities and has to battle her way out.
No,
And
I was
very
talking about
exciting.
like the drug addiction kind of
Oh
angle
yeah,
to
that's
it.
in the game too. No, that's
Okay.
that story in the game also, which is something I really liked. Like the thing that was really great about adapting this game into a movie is that much like The Last of Us, it had fully realized characters with strong backstories and really interesting story arcs that build to the conclusion of the game. When you play The Last of Us, it's like even before the HBO series came out, it felt like watching an HBO series because the characters were so fully realized, the adventure was so I mean, it felt in some ways like you were playing a movie or a series. And Mortuary Assistant in many ways felt like that too. You were like, oh, I can. That's why I enjoyed the adaptation of it so much was we could bring so much of the ingredients of the game into a cinematic story.
You were saying that when you were first got approached with this, you were kind of like, I don't know. And then it sounds the movie's great. Sounds like you had a great time making it and a real
Oh,
positive experience. After doing this, you look back on the other things you said no to. It's like, what could have been? Maybe if it
well,
just scratched the
I mean,
surface a bit.
well, I said I was hesitant before I saw the game. They just said a video
Okay.
game and didn't tell me anything about it. And then the minute that I started playing the game, I was completely drawn in. But I will say that since making Mortuary Assistant, to really answer your question, like a lot of video games or a lot of projects that are based on video games have approached me and said, "Would you like to adapt our video game?" And I've been a little like hesitant there because I loved Mortuary Assistant. I loved the story, I loved the characters, I loved the world. And it's not that I wouldn't adapt another indie horror video game because there are a lot of them that are phenomenally great and would make fantastic films. But there are, I mean, I keep thinking about the video game problem. When I think about back when it all began, the OG video game problem is Super Mario Bros. And that movie, they're like, what do we do with this story? We'll just make it like Blade Runner, which is completely contrary to the entire world of that game. And then a movie like Doom is a great first-person shooter video game, but there's not a lot of story in that game. So in that movie, they're imposing characters and story and plot onto something that was more of an experiential game. So I'm like, I don't think all games should be made into movies. But that said, some games translate beautifully. And like The Last of Us was a good one. Josh Rubin did a great game into film movie called Werewolves Within, which I highly recommend. Josh Rubin's a
Love that
great
movie.
director. It's such a good film. I mean, you don't have to like, and like Werewolves Within was inspiring because with that movie too, I didn't know the game and I loved the film. And watching that, I was inspired. That was one where it's like with Mortuary Assistant, I was like, Brian Clark will be with me every step of the way, and we're going to honor every single aspect of the game. And we hope people who love the game respond to our movie. But I thought a lot about Josh Rubin, and I thought a lot about Werewolves Within, and I thought how great that movie was by itself. And I was like, Brian Clark empowered me in that way too. He said, make the film as good as you can, make the film its own strong, unique voice, and then it can exist right next to the game, and they can be traveling companions together. So Werewolves Within was inspirational. But I loved Iron Lung by Markiplier, and I'm really looking forward to Exit 8, which is coming out. I thought Markiplier's movie, that one felt really, it made me think about what's the key to making a good video game adaptation. It's, well, you have to care. You have to care about the contents of the game. Markiplier was so clearly passionate about Iron Lung and so clearly passionate about translating that game into a movie. And 2 hours and 7 minutes is very long, but I left that movie with a big smile on my face. It reminded me of like when first time filmmakers like George Romero on Night of the Living Dead and Stuart Gordon on Reanimator put everything they had into it because you might never get another chance to make a movie. Iron Lung felt like that. So some people are like, oh, it's indulgent. But I was like, no, I think it's that he's putting everything he's got into it. He loves this game so much. And that movie goes into weird Cronenbergian and Sam Raimi-esque places. It gets very gory by the end. So I was very happy to come out right after Mortuary Assistant's coming out on Friday the 13th and then to Shudder on March 27th. But I'm really happy that we're coming out after Iron Lung because it feels like we're all on the same trajectory of trying to tell indie horror games as a cinematic story and tell it with great passion. But you know, I wouldn't do another video game unless I really, really, really loved the material as much as I loved Mortuary Assistant and as much as Markiplier loved Iron Lung.
I mean, if they do Silent Hill, please do that because I'd love to
I don't
watch you
know.
do a Silent Hill.
No, man, Silent Hill is tough because that game is one of the best horror games ever made, and they've never been able to crack the code of making it into a movie. And I think it's because that movie is also that game is experiential. There's so much in that game about like just walking around inside this foggy town and seeing these weird monsters out of the corner of your eye and stuff like that. So, and also I think there are too many cooks in the kitchen with the Silent Hill series. I think that they're trying to please too many masters. And on Iron Lung and on Mortuary Assistant, I felt like it was Markiplier and David Rusowski, and on Mortuary Assistant was me and Brian Clark. And we were very supported by Shudder and Epic. We were very empowered by them. They weren't, it felt more like we were making RoboCop than RoboCop 2. RoboCop was, nobody expected that movie. Like they just went out and made that movie. It's like, all right, do the best robot cop movie that you can, and they made a classic. And then RoboCop 2, like everybody had their fingerprints all over it. They were all like messing with it. And I feel like the Silent Hill series is like that for me. Now, I actually prefer the Resident Evil series because I think Paul W.S. Anderson has a wonderful B-movie spirit to him. Like
Yeah.
in Resident Evil, where all the laser beams chop that guy into a million pieces. I mean, and Mortal Kombat, like those movies make the little kid inside my heart leap for joy. So Zach Cregger's is doing the new Resident Evil movie. And if you watch the ending of Weapons, you're like, this could be the best Resident Evil movie of all time.
Yeah. Well, I think with Silent Hill, for example, like the story in the game is real esoteric and heady. And then
More
when
like
they
David
made the
Lynch.
movie, they're like, no, we got to explain everything. I'm like, that's not what's cool about it. You're removing the thing that's cool about it.
The number one mistake, yeah, you don't over-explain anything. You let the viewer figure it out for themselves because viewers are extremely smart. Let the viewer catch up with you. Yeah, I agree with you entirely. Silent Hill doesn't explain anything, and the viewer fills it all, or the player fills it all in. And the movies do over-explain, and it's a catastrophic problem for video game adaptations. But also, anytime any movie or any project tries to over-explain their world, they're denying the viewer the opportunity of exploring the world by themselves and figuring out how that world works.
So with Mortuary Assistant, like it has the video game has a fan base, and then you threw yourself into the ring. So now the movie's going to come out, and you're going to get hate or love or whatever, depending on how this is received. Where something like Slapface, you put that out, no one knows what it is. They're going to watch it and they're going to like it or hate it. But then Mortuary Assistant comes out, they're going to like it or hate it, and then they're going to be a lot more emotional about it because this is something we're anticipating. Have you thought of that, or is that something that kind of goes through your head?
I think it's impossible not to work in that arena and not think about that as like a possible consequence of making the movie. All I could say was that when I spoke to Brian, so Brian was part of an interview process where they talked to a bunch of different directors. And Brian, who created the world of the Mortuary Assistant, selected me. He said Jeremiah is the closest to what I want out of this
Oh, he's
movie.
got good taste, but go on.
No, I appreciated it just because it meant that we were on the same page. It's
Yeah.
like now if now with Slapface, it was the same as doing the Mortuary Assistant in the sense of regardless of any expectations the fans of the game might have, if they don't like the movie, it is my fault entirely as the storyteller because I didn't do it properly. But if they like the movie, it's not mine. It belongs to them because they filled the whole thing in. And George Miller said that when he was putting out some movies, and I took it to heart. I was like, that's the only way to go when you're making any project, whether it's an original like Slapface or an adaptation like Mortuary Assistant. You just have to put your whole heart into it. And if I'd phoned it in on the movie or something like that, then they could justifiably like crucify me for not caring. They may crucify me anyway because it's not what they want, but that is up to them. The movie doesn't belong to me or Brian anymore. It belongs to the audience, it belongs to the fans, and they'll decide for themselves whether they like it or not. But I mean, but I take your point to heart because it is something that I thought about an awful lot. I was like, what if all the fans have their own version of the movie inside their head? And it's, well, there's nothing I can do about that. I can only tell this story as honestly and as passionately as I can.
Yeah. And what else you got coming up?
Well, we'll see. I made a film in Cambodia
Oh,
that last fall, and that was a pretty interesting experience. It's a monster movie set in the jungle. But the thing I'll say about that experience, just very quickly, because I know we're talking about Mortuary Assistant, but the Cambodian film, it was very interesting to go to a foreign country with a foreign crew and make a movie, particularly Cambodia, because 50 years ago, there was a dictator there named Pol Pot who murdered 3 million people in a mass genocide, including every single filmmaker, every single actor, every single pop star. If you listen to a classic rock station in Cambodia, like all those people were murdered. So you're going to a country that is the same size of Missouri, where we shot Mortuary Assistant, and the film industry was completely leveled. So everybody on that set was like very young. They were in their early 20s. And one of the things I felt good about on that project was that I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to be a part of working in a country where they're building their film industry from the ground up. And the thing I would always tell the crew is like, well, because you're so new, you don't have to unlearn any bad habits. And that was probably the most exciting thing about working in Cambodia. I also ate a spider in Cambodia and a snake
mm.
and cockroaches that were fried. That's a whole other story, but that's a horrific.
On purpose, or someone tricked you?
I did it on purpose.
Okay.
Because they were like, we eat the stuff regular. And I was like, I want to have the Indiana Jones and the
Nah, it's grab where you eat it.
No, and you want to know what a spider tastes like? It tastes like barbecue. So, but Eric, I don't encourage you to eat any of those things, but you'll never have to prove your courage in any other way.
I don't think I'll be. Well, I'm sure sleeping with my mouth open, I may have eaten hundreds of spiders in my lifetime.
See, now we're tapping into the real horror.
But I don't. I didn't go back and watch our previous interview, so I may have asked you this, and if I did, I forgot what the answer was. But I just want to get a film recommendation from you, something that is personal to you, or a movie that's just really good and not enough people talk about it.
Yeah, I'll do the second one. Like a movie I really love, which more people should watch, it's called Censor by Preno Bailey Bond, and it's a British film made a couple years ago. And the main character works for the Censor Bureau in Britain during the 1980s, which was the video nasties era, where they were banning movies like Evil Dead and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And the movie is set in that world of somebody who's denying other people access to a cathartic experience, which I think those movies are. But that person who's doing the censoring gradually over the course of that movie is starting to unravel, and it does a descent into madness. And if you watch Censor and The Mortuary Assistant on a double bill, they would both be fun movies that slip into the realm of madness.
Excellent. Well, Jeremiah, great talking with you again, and I'll come back on the next one. And it looks like there's a couple that I missed. I'm going to have to go back to. So next time we talk, I will have seen those as well.
That sounds great, Eric. Well, it's always a pleasure talking to you, and I'm glad that we got the chance to talk about Mortuary Assistant together.
Excellent. And yeah, everyone check out Mortuary Assistant. And if you hate it, talk to someone else about it. I don't care. So I'm here with Stacey Tenenbaum, director of Tough Old Broads. What brought these three women to you specifically for this documentary?
Well, I was looking for tough old broads and they fit the bill. That would be the simple answer. The more difficult answer is I was spent about 3 years interviewing various trailblazing women and ended up with these three incredible ladies. What I was looking for when I was casting for the film was basically a woman who was a trailblazer. So the first woman to do something in a man's world. That was number one. Number two was that they were over 70. I had to have a cutoff somewhere for old. I know 70 is not old. I know I'm going to eat a lot of hardship on that one, but that was my thing. I had to have a cutoff somewhere. So over 70, and that they were still extremely active now in their older years. So that was the three things I was looking for. And these three women ticked more than all the boxes. They're all so amazing.
So typically with it's interesting you bring up that because like typically with documentaries, it's like, we're just going to follow this person and see what happens, or we're going to follow the story and see what happens. Like you started the documentary, you didn't even know who the subjects were going to be yet. So like, what was what got the ball rolling for the documentary itself before you even got to that part that you were finding the subjects of them?
Yeah, I mean, I do films about sort of ideas. I actually came up with the title before I went looking for the ladies. So I was actually watching another doc. I watch a lot of docs because we should support independent cinema. And I was watching a doc about street photography. And there were 5 street photographers that were in this doc. It was great. I even forget the title. I feel so bad for whoever it was that made this film. But they featured this woman called Jill Friedman, who was a street photographer in New York City in the 70s, and she would hang out with, she live in the fire station and go on all their calls. And then she was living with the police in New York and going on all their calls and taking photos of these extremely dangerous and gritty sort of encounters. And she was such a cool lady, and she was still doing this street photography in the film and up until she died. And I saw her and I was like, she's such a tough old broad, this lady, man. And then I was like, oh, tough old broads. Yeah, that's good. I want to make a film about tough old broads. So really it was the title that inspired me, and Jill Friedman, who was just an incredible older woman and amazing. Yeah.
What were some challenges you had doing this? Because, I mean, well, first of all, like the three women you follow, I can't imagine they were challenged. The three of them seem like they'd be fun as hell to hang out with and just be around. But was there any filmmaking challenges that you've had along the way?
Oh my goodness, so many. I started the film just before COVID. Getting older women to talk to you during the height of COVID wasn't great. So it delayed a lot of the film for those 3 years. The women themselves they're tough. I'm not going to say they're not tough. They know what they want. And I think that's the nice thing about becoming older. I mean, I'm not there yet entirely. I'm getting there. But if you know what your boundaries are, you know what you want to do. They were very, very clear to me in terms of what they were able to do and what they wanted to do in the films. Yeah, and then they had their challenges. I mean, Sharon's an artist, right? She's like all over the place. So like booking dates with her, as wonderful as she is, was a challenge. Sela had all kinds of health difficulties. So filming with her ended up being a little bit more complicated. I mean, Catherine was fantastic. She's like a type A. She was the easiest of the old bronze, but they have their little challenges. I mean, when you're doing documentary films, you're dealing with human beings, right? And they have their lives and their priorities and their things. And you have to figure out a way to schedule in between all that.
How long did this take? Because some of the stuff that you're shooting in this would happen like quite a while ago.
Yeah. So I started looking for the ladies in 2019. And then we started seriously shooting. I did a couple of exploratory shoots in 2022. And then the bulk of the shooting happened in 2023, right up until the Olympics in 2024. I just dragged on for quite a while. So the last shoot that we had was just after inauguration, Trump's latest inauguration, and January 19th, 2025. But yeah, I guess it was filmed. It was a long filming period. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, geez, the 2025. It feels like 10 years ago.
I know, believe me. So yeah, we were in DC for the election night, and I thought I was going to get the greatest feminist happy ending I ever could. And then the election night didn't really quite turn the way we thought it was going to. So then I went back again just before inauguration for the People's March that they had there.
What's it like doing a documentary? Because they take so long to make. I mean, unless they're doing a documentary about something that happens in a minute, and that's as long as it is. But they take a long time to make, and I'm sure you got to get like investors or whatever to put money into it. Do you have to deal with the pressure? Come on, when's this thing come out? It's not ready yet. Sorry, I don't know what to tell you. Or do the people that invest in it understand what they're getting into as far as documentaries go?
Well, I come from Canada, so I'm in a bit of a different situation. A lot of the money that went towards making the film was from the government. But dealing with the government funding agencies isn't a walk in the park either.
Oh, real quick, back up a bit. How does that work?
So what happens in Canada, the system is you have to find a broadcaster first. And there aren't many broadcasters that are screening documentaries anymore. So it's really, really hard. I got a broadcaster on board. I got so much rejection on this film. And then once you have a broadcaster, you apply for funding, and there's very onerous funding applications. And I got rejected the whole first year, so then I went back the second year, finally got my funding in. So it takes about 2 years to get everything nailed down. And then I did deliver the film a little bit late, but not anything out of the ordinary. So I think I sort of hit my targets. And it is going to be coming out in theaters across Canada March 8th for International Women's Day. And then it's going to be broadcast on TV on Mother's Day, which I think is really sweet.
Oh, nice. Have you had a lot of people watch this so far? What kind of response have we got from it?
Well, this is my world premiere. So I
mean, like people like me, and I'm sure there's other people that have seen it.
I mean,
a little bit of feedback.
Started to get press that I'm speaking with, and people seem to really respond to the film. I hope people like it. I mean, I've never seen it with an audience live before, so that's going to be just such a treat. So I have 3 screenings here in Santa Barbara, one tomorrow night at 5 p.m. I have one on February 11th, noon, and another one at 8 a.m., seniors hours, on February 13th. So that's going to be my first chance to really see how audiences are reacting to the film, which, I mean, you make a film for audiences, so I'm really excited for that and to see if it inspires people and makes them want to speak out and be active and advocate for change.
Well, as someone that has seen it, let me give you a bit of feedback. Very inspiring. These women are cool as hell, and I want to hang out with all 3 of them. And the stuff that they do is amazing, and the way you present that is wonderful. And I guess we'll just, first of all, congratulations on the documentary, and I guess we'll just end with a movie recommendation from you. Just a movie that you think is either personal to you or a movie this one's really good and no one talks about.
Oh, geez. My favorite film these days is Perfect Days, the Wim Wenders film that came out about the toilet bowl cleaner. I know it sounds terrible, but I think it's a masterpiece of a film. It's about a guy who cleans toilets in Tokyo, and it's just beautiful. It's just a fantastically beautiful film. So, Wim Wenders, Perfect Days, that would be my perfect film right now.
Excellent. Well, Stacey, thanks for joining me, and congratulations on the movie. And if you see the 3 tough old broads within the coming, tell them Eric wants to give them all big hugs.
I got 2 broads coming here. So Catherine Switzer is going to be here for the premiere, the world premiere, and so is Sharon Furler, the photographer. They're both going to be in Santa Barbara tomorrow, February 10th. And then Catherine Switzer will also be at the screening on February 11th. So,
Excellent.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to be back together with them. It's been a year since I've seen them. So yeah, I'm really, really happy. I mean, we've become friendlies and everything we've gone through in the filming, so that's great.
Excellent. Well, yeah, congratulations again, and thanks for joining me.
Thanks so much. Take care.